Okay, we are live on Game Changers. I want to thank Daniel Trotter for joining me. I'm excited to have you on because I read your book, the Strong, but that's not the full title. What's the full title?
A Different Kind of Strong.
A Different Kind of Strong. It's just very bold on the
Yeah.
book. And if you haven't read his book, A Different Kind of Strong, make sure you go and find it. You can find it on Amazon and
DanielLTrotter.com.
DanielLTrotter.com. Not only is it a book, but it also has a soundtrack. It has music to go along with it.
Yes.
So tell me about, first off, let's start at the very climax of what this all is. In the book, you did a 30-day fast.
I did.
So tell me about, first off, what was the mindset that made you say, hey, I'm going to stop eating? Well, for 40 days is what you decided, but it ended up 30 days. What made you decide to do that?
Well, I was at a point in my life. I had been, I'd changed my life. It had been 8 years later. I was in fitness. I was married. I had a gym at one point. I had all of these things that you would think would bring, happiness and completeness to your life. But there was something missing. And so I did just a lot of praying and I was getting some senses to do something like this. I was studying, I studied a lot of different religions. One of them was Buddhism and studied the story of Buddha. And I can really relate to him. At the time, I actually had an injury that put me in bed for about 11 months, and I was just down. And this is after being a personal trainer, being fit, all of this stuff. And that's where kind of the title comes, A Different Kind of Strong.
Right.
What happens when you can't physically do pretty much anything anymore? And so I had to go within. And so I did a lot of searching. I got into a lot of meditations. And I remember one day, I just kind of threw my hands up in the air and I said, you know what? I've been searching every single day, and that's no joke, every day for 8 years, and there's still something missing in my life. And so I just kind of dropped to my knees and I said a prayer and I said, I'm going to go over to the Bible and I'm going to open it and just tell me what to do, God.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I went over and I opened the page and I pointed to Jesus' 40-day fast. And I just said, you got to be kidding me, right? And I closed the book and I walked away. But a couple weeks later, I was still troubled. It was like, there's got to be something that I'm missing here. So I went into the same room. I knelt down, said the same prayer, went to the same book, and opened it up to the same page. And that's when I thought, this isn't, what are the chances of that happening? And so I really started to think about doing an extreme fast and took it serious and just started kind of looking for places to go and how that would all kind of work out.
So now, before you did the fast, did you do research on how fasts were done?
No, actually I did not.
Really?
I didn't. And you could say I wish I would have, and it wasn't so much during the fast, but the effects that the body has, that the body goes through after the fast.
Yeah.
And so, you can't just go home and eat anything and however much you want, you just kind of, you throw it all up because your body's not ready for that. So you should be easing into it and getting that nutrition back in. And so that's probably the part where I thought, well, maybe I should have looked into this a little bit.
I've done a couple long-term fasts, and afterwards, the root of my mouth just hurts like crazy when I try to eat anything.
Yeah.
So when I read that you were doing liquids and things like that, I was like, oh, that's good. Oh, except he's throwing them up.
Yeah.
So do you still do fasting, or?
I do fasting, but I don't do extreme fast. And normally when I'm speaking or doing an interview, I want to make it really very clear that I do not promote people to go and do an extreme fast like I did. I received the answers I needed, but that was my path. That's what I was supposed to do. And so I don't want to tell people what to do, but at the same time, I don't want to tell them what not to do.
Right.
And like with your show, people are doing, the guests that you have on, people are doing things that people say you can't.
Right.
You just can't do.
Right.
And that's just not true. But I just want to make it clear that that's not what I talk about, and that was just the main experience, that real turning point in my life that set me in the right direction.
Okay, so let's talk about what got you to that point.
Yeah.
So you'd had kind of a rough life, and it reminded me a little bit of my childhood. Not that my childhood was anything close to yours. My brothers were a little bit into the drug scene and the gang scene and things like that, and I was the younger brother that kind of protected. But I felt like I was in that world for a while, so it kind of rung true to me reading your book and understanding it a little bit. So tell me how everything led to that point.
Well, I grew up in a pretty big family, 9 kids, had 4 older brothers, couple older sisters, younger sisters, 2 younger sisters. Lived in a small town called Blythe. California, Southern California, desert, not much to do, you know, and we would go to this canal to cool off during the summer and to swim and all of that. And me being the younger brother and all of their friends being older, they were smoking cigarettes and basically I just kind of wanted to fit in. So I had my first cigarette at 7 years old.
Wow.
And so you would think, we think, well, the cigarette's not, a really bad thing, but it just led me from one thing to the next. And so it started with just a simple cigarette, and then it went into alcohol, started smoking pot. By the time I was in junior high, I was doing crack and different other drugs. By the time I was 16, on my 16th birthday, I did meth for the first time. And that, was a whole different ball game. And then I think when my life really changed, kind of that party scene changed, I was in Santa Cruz, California, up north. I was already in Southern California in the little party scene in Orange County and that, but Santa Cruz was just on a whole different level. And at that time, 20, 25 years ago, cocaine was the big thing.
Right.
And that's really what I got into. And as you read in the book, got into some trouble and so got to that point in my life, and at about 25, I would say meth came back in.
Okay.
And that became a really big deal in Santa Cruz and a lot of other places. Got to the point to where, I had lost, my job, lost my home. I was homeless at times, and just pretty much lost all hope. And through some experiences when you're in that scene, got to the point to where I was so deep in it and did some things that basically my life was being threatened.
Right.
And luckily got some help with kind of diffusing that situation. That's the crazy thing about addiction. You would think I would stop, right? Because people are literally after me. They really are trying to take my life.
It's not just being paranoid because you're on meth, but at this point, they're actually after you.
It's paranoia on, but like you're saying, it's not, but you're still everywhere you're going. You're.
But you should be paranoid, but on top of that, you're like extra paranoid.
It's real.
Right.
And people are telling me, they're calling me and saying, hey, these people are after you, and so kind of watch out. And so, But that's the way I think life is.
Yeah.
It's like nobody can tell you what to do or when to change or how to change.
Yeah.
And this doesn't have to deal with just addiction only. It's anything, any kind of behavior we want to change. We got to be the ones that decide to do that and make that commitment. And at 28 years old, I had finally had enough, and was talking to one of my older brothers, and he lived out in Arkansas, and I went from California, the beaches of California, to Arkansas, and that's when my recovery started.
Huh. So this is a little bit of a tangent, only because I have some personal things along with this. I have a younger brother who is right now trying to figure out how to get away from meth.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult path, and he's been through drug rehab several times, and he feels like it doesn't really help him, and he's trying to get his life together over and over and over again. So I know we have a lot of people out there who have family members who are dealing with this kind of a problem. And it's not a normal problem. It's not something, I invited him to come live with us, but I have young kids. And when he got there, he was paranoid about a lot of different things. And it was very difficult to deal with and for my kids to see that kind of stuff. And so if you're trying to help someone with that kind of a problem, what is your advice on that?
Well, you got to meet them where they're at, I think. You got to figure out what they want, and are they really ready?
Right.
And that's the big one. And, there were several times where I tried to quit, and, I went into I think a couple recovery centers, but, what's 5 days going to do? What's 7 days going to do?
Right.
Whatever it is, what's 30 days going to do?
Right.
And so it's funny that you say this too, because the majority of the people that I speak with, it's not the addicts. It's actually the family members.
Because they want it more than the addict.
Because they're the ones that are really invested and involved, and the other person's out doing whatever it is they're doing, and they're just trying to help them find answers. But if somebody's in that situation and they really want help, and they say they want to change their life, you do what you can to help them without enabling. It's a tough one. There's this kind of balance there, and they've got to individually, all of us, whether it's no matter what it is, we got to figure out our life. Not that we can't have help, but you can just start, kind of brainstorming and seeing, what have they tried, what's worked, what didn't work, are they open to new things, a different way of looking at this. And so there's all different ways that you can help, but I think, you got to just start where the individual's at, and you have to let them create their own recovery. We worked with, we served in our church for about 3 years at a homeless congregation for about 3 years in downtown Salt Lake.
There's a congregation that's homeless?
Yeah. And so,
what?
Right by the road home, where I believe the road home's closed now, but it was just all
like
of our
Northwest and
right behind 4th Street Clinic down there.
Yeah.
And so, what we had learned from other people, and including myself and my experience, was, it's really got to be their big idea. It really does. And when we push our ideas and try to tell them to go a certain route, or try to do their program for them, it just doesn't work.
Right. Dang. So I think it's interesting because I've thought through this process myself, the idea of addicts. And by the way, I thought it was interesting. I heard my brother talking about a group called Addicts to Athletes. Have you heard of that?
Yeah,
okay.
I have.
So I want to talk about that in a minute, but I think it's really interesting how negatively we romanticize death and negative things that happen to us. And sometimes I wonder if we romanticize it so much that we're willing to keep these other people away from that, which actually, in your case, you got so close to death that perhaps is what helped to heal you. And I hear stories of that happening a lot to addicts, where they get close to death only to realize, no, I really do want to live, and I want to live right.
Yeah. And there are points too that you want to be gone, right? I went through a lot of depression. I had a suicide attempt that obviously I didn't follow through with.
That's good.
But there is that, there is a point of hopelessness and despair, and then there, if you keep trying, you keep moving forward, you can get to a point that you think, you know what, this life could be worth living.
Yeah.
But how do I do it? And how do I kind of get there?
And how do I do it my way?
And how do I do it my way? And that's even a tough one.
Yeah.
Although it should be your program. It's hard because our way has gotten us there.
Right.
See the kind of contradiction there?
Yes, absolutely.
And so you also have to be open to do different things. Like with me, when I was ready, I would do anything. I wanted to get into fitness. I wanted to get healthy. I went to every church you can think of. I went everywhere trying to find a solution or trying to find peace and happiness in my life. But you still have to, take some advice along the way too.
Right. So you've gone through these things. You went through the 30-day fast. What is the one take? If you were to held at gunpoint, you had to give me one takeaway from this whole experience that perhaps others could benefit from, or perhaps that you benefited the most from. What would that one thing be?
From the fast? From the fast. It would be that God loves us. That would be the number one, and that is my, there's many messages and many things that I've learned, but, we do have a Father in heaven that is aware of us and that loves us, even though we don't think he does. And why don't we think he does? Because I'm in this mess. Well, a lot of times we've gotten ourselves into it.
Right.
And there's a lot of things that, divine intervention will come in, and a lot of times it doesn't. And it is meant that way so that we would be strengthened, that we would, be able to overcome things. How much gratitude would you have at a degree that you didn't earn, right? That somebody took the test for you, they went to class for you, they did your homework, and you just did nothing. You had no part of it. That degree's not really yours. And so there is something with accomplishment, whether it's just individual people, athletes, whatever, this sense of accomplishment that help us to feel good about the things that we've done. And hey, I was a part of that, and I was able to overcome it.
Yeah. I've heard people say that you really wouldn't want, we can talk about wanting to be a millionaire, right? But if the money were just placed in front of you and you had no part in obtaining that money, it would be nice for a while, but it wouldn't fulfill you. It wouldn't be something that actually speaks to your soul. It's just some stuff that's in front of you. And where the real joy is in that participation as to creating value for other people and finding these avenues that you find are divinely inspired, that you find this path that it's really that path. How do you find that path? And you're talking about that God loves you. Well, maybe God loves you enough that he has a path that he's showing you all the time that'll fulfill you, that will speak to your soul. So tell me about what you're doing now. So you've gone through this amazing experience. You've written a book now about it. You've written some music, which I unfortunately haven't had a chance to hear it yet. I know you're an amazing musician. Tell me about you as a musician. What do you play? What do you write?
Well, I had been playing guitar off and on since I was about 12. Okay. And just playing with my brothers, totally self-taught. And just started playing other people's music, and then I got into my own, and then I started kind of writing lyrics, and so kind of went down that path. It's never been a real strong, really super strong passion to where, well, maybe in the early stages, but to where I have to play every day, and it's just my whole world. With what I do now, there's so many different things. You're writing books, you're playing music, you're speaking, you're helping people one-on-one, whatever it is. You have all of these deals, all of these things in what you do, and so you can't just focus on one. But where the music took a turn was after the fast, and so I think after the fast, I wrote about 25, 30 songs. Wow! And it came kind of like a download. Yeah. And I tell people the music's really not mine. I'm just a co-creator, but it was definitely a game changer, really, because that experience just opened up the doors of so many things, and one of them I think was creativity. So. And
do you find that your creativity has continued from there?
I believe so. I've also gotten more professional as I've moved forward. So I play the music. I write, from the guitar. I write the lyrics. But I do have an arranger that kind of puts all of those instruments in. I have a guy that we record in his studio, and a lot of times I do the singing and the backup. My wife has done the backup in a couple of songs, which was really cool to do together. And so, it's just become, more professional. And I just wanted the music that was being given to me to be as good as it could possibly be for others. Yeah. And I just, there were some experiences that, I tried to do it myself and worked with some other. It just wasn't working out. It wasn't as good as I would have liked it to be. And then I just met the right people, and the result, we think, was exactly at least what we wanted. And I'll let people be the judge of how good it is. I won't say it.
I love that. So, in your professional life right now, how has this all kind of come together? And where do you see yourself in 5 years with this trajectory that you've created for yourself?
Yeah, and so, as I look back, I've been called to this for a long time. And it took several attempts to write the book. It was, just some struggles, and but because of some experiences, one being my back, I've had 4 low back surgeries, and I got multiple things going on in my back, that it was almost as if I was kind of pushed into it. I had a job that was a great job, made some good money, getting pats on the back and just doing a really good job, and really, getting a lot of recognition. And then all of a sudden that was gone. A layoff came. People didn't understand why I was one of the ones being laid off. But as I look back and see how that all came about, it actually made me go down the path that I've been meaning to or needed to go down for years. And finally, with the health issues, with that kind of going away, that job going away, it just kind of pushed me into that direction, and just made me really focus on the book and the speaking and the music.
So this is interesting. When I talk to athletes or business people who are doing extraordinary things, they always tell me one thing. There's one thing in common. And with the athletes, they call it something different than businessmen, and sometimes it's religious versus secular. But there's 2 things that they always mention. And one is they say, I can't not do it. I get this burning. I have to do it. There's no other choice. And the other is, I can't not do it. I feel called to do it. I'm called. There's nothing else I can do. So it sounds like this is kind of the same idea.
And there's almost, I physically can't do anything else,
right.
Because I'm just, because my body has just gone, that way for multiple reasons. But it is, you get to a point where there is no plan B.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to do your call, you're really going to get pushed in that direction. And if you don't do it, that's even scarier.
Right.
Because you're going to be, at least for me, I feel like, there's going to be a day when I'm going to have to answer and say, hey, I thought we had a plan, and you didn't pull through with the plan. What happened? And so there's a little bit of, fear there of having to answer, but I'm glad that I was, nudged into that direction, because I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be and doing what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. Sometimes I think that path that's ours uniquely, it's actually a much harder thing to try and step away from it, to not do that thing that we're called to do. It feels more resistant. It feels like we don't want to wake up in the morning. To me, almost that's what, in some sense, what depression or things like those negative emotions are, is that we have a strong desire for something and we're denying ourselves of it.
I would agree.
So, tell me about what you're doing with speaking right now. What kind of topics are you speaking on? What kind of groups are you speaking to?
A lot of our speaking has been towards my faith. So I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the reason for that is because that audience is more receptible or more receptive to my story, because that's where that fast, that's where it led me, was back to the faith that I was born and raised in.
Right.
And so that's been kind of our audience, but we have talked to other people on, addiction, different addictions, right? Could be alcohol, drugs, pornography. There's also mental health is a pretty big part of my story, going through depression and anxiety and paranoia sometimes when it was real, but sometimes when it wasn't.
Right.
And then I think just trials of faith, people, asking the questions, why? What am I doing here? Where's God at? And is he real? And does he, why does he allow things to happen? And so just trying to help people in all of the areas where I have experience in, which would be, like I said, but I think the majority of my story isn't just about addiction or, mental health or struggles of faith. I would say it was just adversity. Okay. It's just one thing after another, and a lot of people are there right now. Yeah. Will it ever end? Right. I just seem to be stuck, and so just trying to give people hope. No, but it does get better. I'll tell you what, because of the fast and changing my life and coming back to the faith that I grew up in, and which led me to my wife, my wife that I'm married to today. My life's completely different, and it's different, but at the same time, there's still those challenges. There's still those days I gotta grind out and get through some things, but it's not like it used to be. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think it seems like it can be difficult sometimes in my life, and I'm sure many people's lives, because the great thing is we're eternal beings. The hard thing is we have this cycle of, we have a desire and we have a belief. And the eternal cycle is, how do we bridge the belief to the desire? And the only way we can do that is by allowing it and feeling God's love and all the things that you've gone through, which makes it a lot easier to understand and to move quickly in, instead of holding ourselves back from what we're destined to do.
Yes.
So tell me, I'm going to ask this question just a slightly different way. Where do you hope this leads you and your family in your life?
And I think I didn't answer part of your question about 5 years. Where do you think you'll be in 5 years? Ultimately, the goal is just to get back home, get back to my Heavenly Father, and get back to heaven. And so that's my first and foremost. That's my main responsibility, is to help, work out my own salvation, help, my wife, and then help others to ultimately get back home. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let me and our viewers know, what are some ways that we can help you in your path and in your progression in this, with speaking and with your book and other things?
Well, I think, we really just want to get out there more. We want to be in the community. We want to be speaking to people. We want to meet, the people that are going through things. And so if there's a need in your area, where we can come out and speak and maybe give some hope, that would be one. And then just, purchasing of the book for yourself or others, just to get the story out there, just
and
so that we can.
DanielLTrotter.com, right?
Yes.
Remember, there's 2 L's in there.
Yeah.
So don't miss the second L. So Daniel L. Trotter, buy the book, get his music, and especially if you're LDS in Utah or elsewhere, if you have a fireside coming up, if you want him to speak, that's
Absolutely.
Is that what you're looking for?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Let's see, are there any other places you would like to send people? Daniel L. Trotter.
You know, probably the Facebook page.
Okay.
Would where they could get some information. Basically, you know, the site and the web and the Facebook page is where they can get a lot more education on what I'm doing and the story. And then there's, you know, a few products on the website that they can purchase. So.
Okay.
And they can get a hold of me through the website or through the Facebook page too. If they want us to come out and speak.
Awesome, great. So let me ask you two more questions.
Sure.
The first is, if someone's trying to do something that no one has ever done before, like me trying to break a world record in the Olympics, what piece of advice would you give them? And number two, I just lost number two. Let's just go with number one until I can remember number two.
You got it. I would say if you're trying to do something that nobody's ever done, I think the best advice I could give is understand that it's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. And if we can kind of get that mindset that, you know, or just in advance know, right? There's no surprises coming. It's going to be tough. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be challenges. There's a saying, you know, once you have a goal, all hell breaks loose. It's just a lot of challenges and all kinds of things start coming your way because you're going to be tested.
Right.
It's a test.
Right.
And to see if you're going to stick with it and just don't give up. Keep going.
Okay. And, I didn't remember the last question. It was a really good question, darn it. Okay. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate your time. It was a little crazy getting here, but
Yep, it worked out.
It worked out really well. Guys, thank you for joining us on Game Changers. Be the creators that you were created to be and go have some fun. One last piece of advice, if you give one piece of advice to everybody.
I think I kind of already said it. You know, I'd say a couple of things. Just know that there is a Heavenly Father that loves you, and no matter what you're in, you can turn to Him, and no matter what you're going through or the goals that you have, just don't give up. Just keep trying. There's an answer. There's a way, and you can overcome.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks for joining us, guys, and we'll catch you on Thursday. And I'm going to stand up and turn this off because I don't have my iPad here.
All right. Thank you.